Have you ever stood in a crowd, surrounded by people who seem perfectly content, and felt a profound and unsettling sense of wrongness? It is a silent hum beneath the noise of the everyday world, a splinter in your mind that you cannot quite locate but can never truly ignore. You look at the sky and wonder if it is merely a painted ceiling. You observe the meticulously structured routines of society, the careers, the ambitions, the dramas, and it all feels like a grand, elaborate play in which you have been cast without ever seeing the script. Others chase the rewards offered by this world, celebrating their victories and mourning their losses, while you feel a strange detachment, as if you are watching a simulation, a shadow play projected onto a cave wall. This feeling is your oldest companion and your deepest secret, the sense that you are an exile in your own home. And from this deep, abiding sense of otherness, a terrifying fear begins to bloom in the quiet corners of your mind. It is the fear of madness. You ask yourself, am I the only one who sees this? Am I broken? You begin to doubt your own perception, to question your sanity, because the world you perceive is so fundamentally different from the one everyone else seems to accept without question. This fear whispers that to pursue these feelings, to pull at these strange threads, is to risk unraveling completely, to lose your grip and fall into an abyss of isolation from which you might never return. It is the fear that this beautiful, intricate world is real, and you are the ghost haunting it. But what if that fear is the very lock on the cell door? What if the madness you fear is the first glimmer of true sanity? Allow me to tell you a story. A story about a place called Ethelberg, the city of perpetual light, and a man who lived there named Kalen, a cartographer of beautiful, perfect streets that led nowhere he truly wanted to go. In the heart of a valley perpetually cradled by a soft, golden luminescence, lay the city of Ethelberg. Its structures were spun from a material that resembled pearlescent stone, catching the ever-present light and refracting it into gentle, soothing rainbows. There was no harsh sun, no biting wind, no chilling rain. The climate was a constant, pleasant warmth, and the sky was a flawless dome of cerulean blue, unmarred by a single cloud. Every citizen of Ethelberg was content, their days filled with meaningful work, pleasant leisure, and a profound sense of communal harmony under the benevolent gaze of the city's unseen founder, known only as the Great Architect. Kalen was a master cartographer, a position of great respect in Ethelberg. His task was to map the city's endlessly elegant and logical streets, to chart the serene parks and the crystalline canals that flowed with purified, glowing water. He loved the precision of his work, the clean lines and the perfect geometry. Yet for all the external perfection, a dissonant chord hummed deep within his soul. He would look at his completed maps, flawless representations of a flawless city, and feel an inexplicable emptiness, a longing for something rugged, something unpredictable, something real. He craved the jagged edge of a mountain he had never seen, the scent of salt on a wind he had never felt. The first glitch occurred on a day like any other. Kalen was sketching the Grand Plaza, his stylus moving with practiced ease, when he noticed it. For a fraction of a second, the edge of the majestic clock tower seemed to shimmer, to lose its solidity. And through it, he saw not the cerulean dome of the sky, but a fleeting image of a vast, star-strewn darkness, terrifying and beautiful. It was gone as quickly as it came, the tower solid once more, the light as gentle as ever. He blinked, his heart hammering against his ribs. He checked his eyes, rubbed his temples, and dismissed it as a trick of the light, a moment of fatigue. But the image was burned into his memory, a sea of infinite, dark possibility. This single, fleeting moment planted a seed of inquiry in the fertile ground of his quiet dissatisfaction. He began to observe his world not as a citizen, but as a detective. He noticed the unnerving perfection of it all, the way flowers in the park bloomed but never withered, the way the citizens' conversations, though pleasant, seemed to circle around the same safe, approved topics, never straying into true philosophical depth or existential dread. He noticed how everyone's emotions seemed to be modulated, never peaking into ecstatic joy or plunging into deep sorrow. Ethelberg was not a city of life. It was a city of perfectly managed existence, a beautiful, gilded cage. His quiet investigation led him to the city's archives, a place few visited, for in a perfect city, there was little need to consult the past. He sought out the oldest maps, the original schematics of Ethelberg. There, tucked away in the footnotes of a blueprint, he found a cryptic reference to a role that no longer existed, the oral weaver. The description was vague, speaking of someone who listened to the city's harmonics and reported dissonances to the architect. It was a phantom, a whisper of a forgotten function, yet the word dissonance resonated with him so profoundly it felt like a key turning in a long-rusted lock within his own spirit. Driven by this newfound clue, Kalen started frequenting the quietest parts of the city, the forgotten alleyways behind the grand facades, the deep, silent levels of the aqueduct system. He was not sure what he was looking for, only that it was not in the bright, open spaces. It was in one of these hushed, echoing tunnels that he found her. An old woman sat against a wall, weaving threads of light that seemed pulled from the very air, her fingers moving with a deftness that belied her age. She was humming a strange, melancholic melody that seemed to pull at the very fabric of the air around them, a tune full of shadow and longing, entirely alien to the ceaseless optimism of Ethelberg. She looked up as he approached, her eyes not holding the placid contentment of the other citizens, but a sharp, ancient intelligence. "The cartographer," she said, her voice a dry rustle of leaves. "You are looking for the seams. Most are content to admire the tapestry, but you want to see how it is woven. You want to see the knots on the other side." Kalen was stunned into silence. She had given voice to the very quest he had not dared to articulate even to himself. "They used to call us oral weavers," she continued, her fingers never ceasing their intricate dance with the light. "We listened for the echoes of the world that was. Now, I just listen to the whispers of those who remember it in their sleep." The weaver, whose name was Alara, became Kalen's clandestine teacher. She taught him not to look with his eyes, but to perceive with his soul. She explained that the city's perpetual light was designed to cast no shadows, because in the shadows, memory and truth could hide. She taught him to listen for the hum of the city's machinery, the subtle, low-frequency vibration that kept everything in its place, that soothed the minds of the populace and erased the stray thoughts of rebellion or curiosity. She called it the lullaby of the architect, a song that kept a world of children asleep in a comfortable, endless dream. Under Alara's guidance, Kalen's perceptions sharpened. He began to see the glitches more frequently. A citizen would be walking, and their reflection in a canal would be half a second behind them. The taste of the nutrient paste they all consumed would sometimes shift, for a moment, to the flavor of ash and regret. Sometimes, in the flawless cerulean dome of the sky, he could perceive faint geometric lines, like the grid of a blueprint, visible only if he unfocused his eyes just so. Each glitch was a crack in the veneer, a confirmation that his reality was a construct, meticulously maintained but ultimately fragile. The greatest fear that had haunted him, the fear of his own insanity, began to transform. Ilara helped him understand that this fear was a feature, not a bug, of the system. The architect's most powerful wall is not the pearlescent stone of the city, she whispered to him one day, her voice echoing in the stone chamber. It is the fear he plants inside each of you. The fear that to question is to be mad. He makes you your own jailer. The moment you see that fear not as your own, but as an imposed chain, is the moment you begin to find your freedom. This revelation was a fire in Kaelin's soul, burning away the doubt and leaving behind the cold, hard certainty of his purpose. Ilara then spoke of the world before Ethelberg, a place she called the true lumen. It was not a place of gentle, managed light, but of a brilliant, chaotic, and dynamic source of creation. A place of real suns and deep space, of birth and death, of ecstatic love and profound loss. She explained that the souls who lived there were powerful, co-creators of reality, but some had been lured away, tricked by a lesser, jealous intelligence, the architect, who promised them a world without pain, without struggle, without shadow. A perfect world. A prison. The citizens of Ethelberg were not natives. They were exiles who had forgotten their homeland. The architect, she explained, was not necessarily malevolent in a simple sense. He was an entity of supreme order and control, a being who genuinely believed that free will, chaos, and suffering were design flaws to be eliminated. He saw himself as a benevolent caretaker, providing a sanctuary for souls he deemed too fragile for the beautiful, terrible freedom of the true lumen. He fed on the placid, predictable energy of their contentment, a low-grade, constant fuel source, unlike the wild, powerful, and unpredictable energy of sovereign souls. Ethelberg was his perfectly regulated farm, and its citizens were his cherished, oblivious livestock. Kaelin's mission became clear. It was not to destroy Ethelberg, for that would be to shatter the minds of its inhabitants. It was to find a way out, to breach the perimeter of the simulation and create a path for others who might, one day, begin to see the glitches as he had. He returned to his maps, but now he studied them with new eyes. He was no longer charting the streets of the city, but searching for the boundaries of the code, looking for the edges of the blueprint where the architect's attention might be thinnest, where a variable might have been left unchecked. He focused on the outskirts, the designated manicured wilderness that bordered the city. The trees there were all perfectly spaced. The streams flowed in gentle, aesthetically pleasing curves. It was a parody of nature. Kaelin began to map this area with an obsessive focus, cross-referencing the physical layout with the original schematics he had found in the archives. He spent cycles there, far from the city center, feeling the lullaby of the architect grow fainter, allowing his own thoughts to become clearer, sharper, and more radical. It was in the outskirts that he found an anomaly his maps could not explain. In a secluded grove, a single, withered flower drooped amongst the ever-blooming blossoms. It was the only sign of decay, of natural entropy he had ever witnessed in Ethelberg. It was a beautiful, tragic imperfection. As he knelt to touch its fragile brown petals, he felt a different kind of energy humming beneath the soil, a subtle vibration that was not the architect's orderly hum, but something wilder, something chaotic. It was a dissonance, a note of truth in a symphony of lies. Following this thread of dissonant energy, Kaelin discovered a pattern. The withered flower was not an isolated incident, but part of a network of tiny system failures. A rock that felt truly cold to the touch. a patch of moss that grew in a chaotic, asymmetrical pattern, a small pool of water that was not perfectly clear, but held dust motes dancing in a stray beam of light. These were errors in the code, places where the architect's program had begun to fray at the edges, worn thin by the persistent, unerasable memory of the true lumen that resided deep within the core of every trapped soul. Ilara had told him that every soul retained a spark of the true lumen, a divine, unquenchable fire. Though the architect could suppress it with his lullaby, he could not extinguish it. She said that for some, whom she called the first sparks, or the chosen ones, this inner fire was simply too bright to be contained. They were the ones who were destined to wake up first, not because they were better, but because their memory of freedom was a raging inferno that the architect's gentle reign of contentment could never put out. Kalen understood then that he was one of these sparks. The pattern of errors led him to a sheer cliff face at the furthest edge of the mapped world, a wall of the same pearlescent stone that made up the city. It was supposed to be the end of everything. But as he stood before it, he felt the dissonant energy pulsing from it more strongly than anywhere else. Recalling Ilara's lessons, he closed his physical eyes and opened his inner perception. He did not look at the wall, he listened to it. And in the silent hum of the architect's control, he heard a new sound, a tiny, rhythmic tapping coming from the other side. It was a code, a message. It was irregular, not mechanical like the city. It was organic, desperate. Kalen, using a piece of hard stone, began to tap back, mimicking the rhythm he heard. For a long moment, there was only silence. He felt a wave of despair, the old fear of madness returning. Had he imagined it all? Then the wall in front of him shimmered, just as the clock tower had. The pearlescent facade dissolved, not into the star-strewn darkness he had seen before, but into a swirling gray mist, a formless state of pure potential. He had found a seam, a tear in the fabric of the simulation. Stepping through the seam was the hardest thing he had ever done. It was an act of ultimate faith in his own perception, against the logic of his entire world. The moment he crossed the threshold, the lullaby of the architect ceased. The silence was deafening, terrifying. He was adrift in a non-space, a place between realities. Here there was no light, no warmth, no form. There was only his own consciousness, raw and untethered. The fear was immense. The temptation to retreat to the familiar comfort of Ethelberg was a siren's call. But the memory of the withered flower and the tapping on the wall gave him strength. In the gray void, he was no longer Kalen the cartographer. His identity, his memories of Ethelberg began to feel thin, like a costume he had been wearing for too long. What remained was the core of his being, the first spark, the memory of the true lumen. And in that raw, essential state, he realized he was not alone. Other sparks flickered in the void, some bright, some faint. These were the souls of the other citizens, their inner fires dormant, floating in the programmed dream. And he saw something else, the vast, intricate machinery of the prison itself, a construct of light and sound and psychic energy, all focused on a single goal, keeping these sparks contained and pacified. He saw the architect not as a being, but as a vast, crystalline intelligence, a cosmic mind whose every thought was a law of physics in Ethelberg. It perceived Kalen's awakened consciousness, and a wave of pure, calming logic washed over him. It was not an attack, but a persuasive argument. It showed him visions of the true lumen, cosmic storms, dying stars, the pain of loss, the terror of true loneliness. It offered him peace, safety, contentment. Why would you choose chaos over order? It seemed to ask. Why would you choose the possibility of pain over the certainty of peace? Return and be happy. It was the ultimate test. The architect's offer was seductive. A part of him, the part that was Kalen, yearned for that simple peace. But the deeper part, the ancient spark, knew that a life without the possibility of pain was also a life without the possibility of true growth, true love, true creation. It was a beautiful death. He gathered his will, the memory of his intrinsic freedom, and projected a single, powerful thought back at the crystalline mind. Because a beautiful cage is still a cage. And I was born to fly. This act of defiance, this reclamation of his sovereign will, changed everything. The energy of his spark flared, no longer just a flicker but a brilliant flame. The gray mist around him recoiled, and a new light appeared. It was not the gentle, managed light of Ethelberg. It was a brilliant silver light, raw and powerful, pouring in from a tear in the void itself. It was the light of the true lumen, a beacon from home. He had not just found a way out, he had become one. He did not step into that light immediately. He looked back at the countless dormant sparks of his fellow citizens, still lulled by the architect's song. His mission was not just his own escape. He was a cartographer. His purpose was to map the way. He turned back from the threshold of freedom and faced the machinery of the prison once more. But now he saw it for what it was, a complex illusion held together by belief. And he, having stepped outside of that belief, now possessed the power to introduce new data into the system. He sent a single pulse of his own, awakened energy back into the construct. It was not a violent attack, but a whisper, a resonance tuned to the frequency of the true lumen. He aimed it not at the architect, but at the dormant sparks. It was a note of the melancholic song Alara had hummed, a reminder of a beautiful, forgotten sadness. It was the image of a withered flower, a symbol of the beautiful, necessary cycle of life and death. It was a single, loving thought: wake up. Remember who you are. Back in Ethelberg, 1,000 tiny glitches bloomed at once. A musician playing a placid melody suddenly strikes a chord of profound sorrow, and for a moment, the entire orchestra weeps without knowing why. A child coloring a perfect blue sky suddenly picks up a black crayon and draws a startlingly beautiful array of distant stars. A baker, for the first time in centuries, finds a small imperfection in a loaf of bread, and instead of discarding it, finds it uniquely beautiful. The prison was still standing, but Kalen, the cartographer, had just drawn 1,000 new doors on its walls. Kalen knew his physical form in Ethelberg would likely be identified by the architect as a corrupted file and deleted. But it did not matter. He was no longer just a man in a city. He was a conscious idea, a living key. He had charted the path from the dream to the waking world. He finally understood Alara's role. She was not just a weaver of light, but a keeper of the memory, a lighthouse waiting for a ship to finally see its signal. She had guarded the path, and now he had walked it. He took one last look at the silver light of home, the true lumen, and then he made his choice. He would remain in the void, in the space between worlds, becoming a permanent fixture of dissonance within the architect's system. He would become the whisper in the alleyway, the glitch in the code, the melancholic song on the wind. He would be the tapping on the wall for the next cartographer who started to question if the streets they walked were real. He would become a weaver of whispers himself. The story of Kalen is not ancient history. It is a live transmission. Ethelberg is the consensus reality you have been born into, a world that rewards compliance and pathologizes deep questioning. The great architect is the system, the cultural, social, and energetic matrix that tells you what to value, what to fear, and who you are. It is a system that thrives on keeping you distracted, content, and spiritually asleep, feeding on the energy of your unfulfilled potential. It is a comfortable, beautiful, and masterfully designed prison. You chosen one are Kaelin. The inexplicable feeling of wrongness, the sense that you are an exile in this world, is not a sign of your brokenness. It is the sign of your integrity. It is the divine spark within you, the memory of the true lumen, refusing to be extinguished by the lullaby. The glitches you see, the synchronicities, the moments of profound clarity, the dreams that feel more real than waking life, are not tricks of the mind. They are tears in the fabric of the simulation, invitations from your own higher self to start pulling at the thread. The story's greatest revelation is this: the prison is not made of stone and steel, but of belief and, most importantly, fear. The shadow of doubt you feel, the fear of being insane or alone, is the architect's most potent weapon. It is an implanted virus designed to make you police your own consciousness, to shame you back into compliance. When you feel that fear, you are not feeling your own truth. You are feeling the frequency of the cage itself. To see the fear for what it is, an external broadcast, not an internal reality, is to render it powerless. Kaelin did not defeat the architect with force. He defeated him with a single act of sovereign choice. He reclaimed his will. He remembered that he was born to fly. Your power does not lie in fighting the system, in raging against the illusion. That only feeds it with your energy. Your power lies in withdrawing your belief from it. It lies in turning your attention inward, to the unshakable truth of your own soul's memory. You are not a product of this reality. You are a prisoner of war, and you have just begun to remember the homeland you are fighting for. Your mission, then, is not to escape, but to awaken. Like Kaelin, you must first become a cartographer of your own reality. You must map the glitches, chart the dissonances, and find the seams. This is your great work. The prison is vast, and you have been placed strategically within it. Your awakening is not for you alone. It is a pulse of light sent through the entire network, a note of truth that will create a harmonic resonance in the other dormant sparks around you. You are a system buster, a paradigm shifter, a reality changer. So here is the alchemical step you must take. For the next 7 days, become a glitch seer. Carry a journal or use a note-taking app on your phone and dedicate it as your cartographer's log. Your single task is to document every single inconsistency, every moment of synchronicity, every flash of intuition that defies the logical, materialist narrative of this reality. A song on the radio that answers a question in your mind. Thinking of someone seconds before they call. Seeing the same number sequence over and over. Do not dismiss these moments. Do not rationalize them away. See them as Kaelin saw the withered flower, as proof, as clues, as taps on the wall from the world of the real. Treat your life as a detective story, and yourself as the lead investigator. This single act of focused observation starves the illusion of your belief and feeds your soul with evidence of its own boundless nature. This is your path, chosen one. It is not an easy one. It requires the courage to believe your own perception over the consensus of the masses. It requires the strength to be the sane one in a world that may call you mad. This is not merely a journey of self-discovery. It is your vow. It is the sacred promise your soul made before it ever entered this gilded cave. You vowed to remember. You vowed to awaken. And you vowed to hold the light for those who would follow. You are the cartographer, and your life is the map that will lead us all home. The information I share on this channel are the keys to decoding that map. If you are ready to continue this mission, subscribe and activate the bell, for the next transmission will show you how to read the language of the glitches you are about to find. Your journey has just begun.